Hello guys, Steelovsky here, and I want to quickly talk about something that I am not very fond of in the community of Elden Ring, and it is kind of handicapping mentality that many players have. So fundamentally, Elden Ring and other Souls games are more of casual games rather than competitive games. By saying so, I mean those games are marketed as something that's supposed to be played through, and that's about it. There is no live service that would be supporting the game. There is not really any sort of the competitive incentive that's supposed to force you to play with other players and compete against them, and so on and so forth. The game itself is collecting players that rather would play Skyrim than, let's say, Overwatch or Valorant, yes. And these player bases are completely different. They coming from the kind of different background. When you're playing PvP game, you kind of enter the competitive environment. It's like, you know, it's kind of like learning the football or soccer if you prefer. It's you have a simple rule set and you actually existing within that rule set, and you kind of have to learn how to use it to your advantage. You have to learn how to correctly spin the ball to score your points. You have to know what kind of rules exist on the field, and you have to learn how to respect them, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, people that play games like Skyrim, they kind of want to get immersed. They kind of want to just experience the world, to have that fun delivered. And because of that, a player that finishes the game and realizes that, oh, there is a whole PvP thing and maybe I'm gonna give it a try, people like that are usually quite surprised that anything that they have experienced so far is like completely different to what they are experiencing now. Because, in fact, PvP in this game is quite a different beast to PvE. Fundamentally, you have to change the approach, you have to change the playstyle, you have to change pretty much anything that thought, for example, was viable in the PvE, and start approaching things from completely different perspective. It's like Elden Ring is two games in one, depending if you are playing PvE or PvP. But the mindset is pretty much the same. It's people that were playing that casual, friendly game that wanted to experience that story, that wanted to get immersed, that wanted to have a big sword and slash the opponents, grow big by increasing their stats, and so on and so forth. Kind of still remain in this mindset of, well, my fun's supposed to be the most important, not realizing that the rules of the game kind of changed. So I have received that comment under one of my recent videos, where the person is saying that they cannot determine if this is skill or tryhard. I mean, are you really better than player who doesn't spend all day practicing these glitches? I mean, tech. First of all, skill and tryhard. One doesn't exclude another. This is coming kind of from that mentality I was talking about. When you're entering a PvP game, it is kind of expected that you are going to try hard. You are in the competitive environment. You're supposed to compete against other players. In this particular case, for the win or lose. If you are jumping into PvP and you are not tryharding, let's say for example in the game like League of Legends, your team would be very upset about you because you are not trying your best. Meanwhile, because of these fundamentals I was talking about, people kind of expect you to just play bad so they have chance to win. It's, you know, it's kind of absurd. You see, the thing about glitches, if they are like considered tech or not, if you are using them or not, if you are using the advanced techniques, if you are using glitches, bugs, and so on and so forth. It is, if you like it or not, sadly a part of the game. And you might not use it personally, but you're supposed to firstly have awareness of their existence, second know how to more or less counter them, and third, and for the most, definitely not disrespect players, that not playing up to your personal rule set and your personal limitations. it is really not something that you're supposed to do. It is kind of loser's mentality, to be honest. Even if there is something that you really dislike about the game, well, it is always very good idea to know how to potentially play around it. Let's bring the example of the Bloodhound Step, that is technically the most overpowered thing in the whole game. This particular Rush of War makes you invincible when you're playing above 50 ms, which is almost always. How can you potentially do anything against something as powerful? It really doesn't look like you have much of the choices. And to be honest, you don't have. But one thing that you can, for example, do is to use the Bloodblade incantation that allows you to cover your main weapon into some sort of the flame that by default is applying the bleed damage onto the opponent, and on top of that it also adds the build-up. Like you hit your opponent once, they are going to receive particular amount of the instant build-up, and then the bar gonna go up further and further by a little bit. So if you are going to use this particular incantation on your weapon, and then you're also going to use the Fire's Deadly Sin, the particular interaction between these spells works in the way that it applies the AoE effect of the main weapon around you in this particular case. So by standing next to the person that uses BHS, you are constantly applying the bleed buildup. You know, it is not perfect solution. It's not even close to be like very good solution whatsoever, but it is somewhat of the solution nonetheless. And the more people are going to theory craft what might be done against particular problem, the more likely it is that there is going to be solution to be found. So yeah, essentially by being offended on Bloodhound Step or anything else that exists within the game, you're kind of limiting yourself, you're limiting your knowledge about what you could potentially do. By just screaming at the other player for using something that you don't like, well, you might feel a little bit better about yourself, but you're not gonna go anywhere with that mentality. You're just gonna get tilted, and at the end of the day, you might end up quitting the game just because of some small insignificant thing in comparison to the whole lot that you have with an Elden Ring that is absolutely amazing. I would say it is absolutely not worth to just limit your knowledge and ultimately handicap yourself just in the name of some sort of pride of yours that usually have very little to no fundamentals, and usually just like kind of being petty than anything else. On top of that, learning new things is actually super fun. Let's take a look on that. So we're gonna use the best tool in the whole world called Paint, and we are going to draw a square. And this is a square that represents your knowledge about the game. And then this is the square, the blue one, is the square of things that you have knowledge about existence, but you don't know how to utilize it. You kind of, you know, you think this is like essentially the field of things that you don't know yet exactly how to use on your own, but you know it exists, and this is something within your reach. From this perspective, you might think like this is everything, yeah? You actually grasp all the knowledge within that another square, and you know what happens next? It kind of turns out there is more. And the more you go into the particular niche, into particular topics and so on, it turns out there is like way and way and way more to grasp, to the point that it is actually becoming overwhelming. There is like that saying of the more you know, the less you know in Polish language. It is obviously direct translation. I'm not sure how exactly it translates to English. I'm pretty sure there is some sort of the similar maxim in there. But the point is that the further you dig into any sort of the niches, the more you realize that it is way harder to grasp and way more complicated than it looks like in the first place, yeah? So let's assume that, for example, you grasped a lot of the knowledge from that red square, yeah? You basically, we're gonna do a little bit of waves here. You didn't know everything, but you know a lot, yeah? But particularly plenty of discoveries from that red square leads to new discoveries, and because of that you ending up having like bumps here and there, some sort of the niches within the niches that you kind of have to grasp from now on. There is like something new to learn, because sometimes a particular discovery leads to another one, and because of that you have more to learn. It is like never-ending process of expanding the enjoyment that you can have from the game, because there is always something new, despite the game, for example, not having patches or like not having new content that would be implemented by the game creators itself. So I would say that changing your mentality from demanding the game developers to do something in your name, or other players to play only according to your individual rule set, is probably not the smartest idea in the long run. In fact, it's probably kind of detrimental. What I would rather suggest is to get over the upsets, and even if you dislike something, try to fight back for the sake of to counter it, for the sake of to somewhat try overcome it. It's another obstacle that you can absolutely get over. It's just that you need to try in the first place. If you are going to act offended for the game mechanic, you just, everything what is going to happen is that like your frustration is going to grow and grow. Ultimately, it's gonna cause issue not for others, but only you and you only. So yeah, answering the question, am I better than player that plays completely glitchless and doesn't use anything outside of the base game mechanics? I might be, or might be not, but it's definitely like me using advanced mechanics of the game doesn't really determine my skill level. And this question is fundamentally wrong. It's coming from kind of casual approach to the game that really do not supposed to exist in the PvP environment. It's not supposed to exist in the competitive environment. That PvP on its own already is, because you compete. Doesn't matter what's your approach. You're competing with the other players. You're trying to beat them. They are trying to beat you. This is competitive environment. So yeah, everything what I'm going to say is that, guys, just no matter if you think that someone is better than you or worse than you, I would suggest to just try to be respectful to each other and try to learn from each other. Just get better, grow, become better player day after day. And I swear you're gonna have way more fun than you would have by just sitting there, gatekeeping others and just fucking complaining. Because that thing is not going to hurt others, it's going to hurt only you. Anyway, thank you a lot for watching, and I see you in the next one. Steelovsky out.